Hi everyone, welcome to lesson 6, surface area and volume of a rectangular prism. Now that title might be a little confusing because as you see our objective is what is a prism? What is a rectangular prism? What is surface area and what is volume? You might be familiar with some of these topics, and if so, this will hopefully reinforce your understanding, but also allow you to start to generalize your understanding in general. So let's start with some definitions. A prism is a three-dimensional geometric shape where the bases, so the ends, are the same shape. So today we're dealing with rectangular prisms, so those bases are rectangles. So it could be a square too, since a square is a rectangle. We're going to be looking at triangular prisms, so the bases are triangles. We're going to be looking at trapezoidal, and we're going to be looking at cylinders. Cylinders are circles. And the volume is the space that a three-dimensional shape fills. Imagine taking a glass and filling it with water. The water is your volume. It's just like in science class. Now, you might be having to draw some 3D shapes. I want to give you a little trick that sometimes helps. And what you do is you start by drawing your two identical bases. So here's my first one. You go up and to the right. There's my next one. And then you start connecting the vertexes that match. So top left to top left, bottom right to bottom right, top right to top right. If you want to get fancy, you could decide that this isn't really visible because it's behind, so you can make it dotted. So then if you want, you could, make this dotted and this dotted as well because you wouldn't actually see it. So there is my rectangular prism. You could also say do this with a triangular prism. Okay, so I'm gonna draw, here's my first triangle and say I'm drawing, this happens to be a right triangle. And then all of a sudden, here we go up and slightly to the right. Oop, that was poorly drawn straight down. There's my other right triangle. So I could connect there to there, there to there, and there to there. There's my right triangle. Again, if you want to get fancy, you could say, well, I wouldn't actually be able to see that back one, and you could turn it into a dotted line as well. So those are our definitions. Make sure that we've added those to our notebook, maybe a drawing or two to make sure we feel comfortable drawing, and let's move on. So here is our task. On the assignment sheet, there is a link called Volume of Rectangular Prism. And this image down here is what will show up. I want you to play around with the slider options and observe the volume created by different combinations of number. The volume is the number of cubic inches. So right now, A is 1, B is 1, C is 1. So that's my length is 1, my width is 1, my height is 1. There's 1 cube. Well, I can move around as much as I want, and it starts to create these different options. And that's what I want you to play around with. I want you to take notes on your observations regarding the relationship between A, B, and C, and the volume of the prism. So how does A impact the volume? How does B impact the volume? And there's going to be some questions in this play posit that you must answer based on your observations. So go to that link and start playing around. Take about 7 minutes playing around with this and making observations. Go ahead. So I look forward to seeing what you think the relationship between A, B, and C is and their impact on volume. But when we go down here, here's the conclusion that we can draw. The volume of the rectangular prism is the area of the base. So for example, if I was to drop this, this is just my base. It is one level. And the area of that, well, it's a 4 by 3, so the area is 12. A represents my height. And right now it has a height of 1, so it's just a volume of 12. But when all of a sudden I go to a height of 2, it creates a second level. So now it's doubled it. That's why it's the area of the base multiplied by the height. So now it's 12 times 2, so I have 24 cubic squares. Well, if I go to all of a sudden 5, I just have 5 levels of 12. That's 60 cubic squares. So you can use this to help ourselves. Now, we're going to do this first problem together. Find the volume of the following rectangular prism. Now, it's the same prism twice because what's cool about a rectangular prism is since all the sides are rectangles, you can decide what the base is. So for example, maybe I decide that the base of this rectangle is this. There is the equivalent one on top. And so I'm taking a look at the dimensions of that base, and it's a 10 inches by 3 inches. So I say, okay, well, if volume equals, we're going to do a big B to represent the area of the base multiplied by the height. So the volume is the area of the base. Well, since it's a rectangle, it's length times width. Then our height is 4 times 4. This is 120. Now remember, we had inches, inches, inches. So it's inches cubed. So volume is inches cubed. Just for the sake of proving to you that it doesn't matter in a rectangle which one's the base, I'm going to now decide that this is my base. So therefore, there is my matching base. My dimensions of that are now a 3 by 4. So therefore, volume again equals the area of the base, which is 4 times 3, multiplied by the height, which in this case, the height again is the distance between the bases. There's the distance between the bases. So times 10. Well, we get a 12 times 10, 120 inches cubed. Same answer. So hopefully we have that example. When it's triangular, we don't have the multiple options. So surface area is our second definition. So make sure we write this down. It is the outside of the prism. It has the word area in it, which means it's not 3D. Area is two-dimensional. So imagine you were to take a prism and you just painted the outside. That's your surface area. It's all of the space on the outside only, not the inside. The volume's the inside, the surface area is the outside. So I want you to find the volume and surface area of the following rectangular prism. Now, the second link on Google Classroom is going to help with this. Now, this example, you see that I made A 9. That's right here. G I made as 4, and C I made as 7. Now, we can take a look at the volume. And again, I'm going to use the base as the part that's actually touching the ground. So I could say again that the volume is the base times height. So the area of the base is 9 times 7 times the height, which is from base to base, which is 4. So that's a 63 times 4. And therefore, our volume is 252 units cubed. Now this is where it becomes challenging. The surface area is the area of each individual side. Well, there's 6 sides. Well, the reason why I'm having you use this link is this slider, the slide to create the net. As I move it, it opens it up and places it down. So now we can see the net. You should be familiar with the net from last year. And I want you to draw the net of every rectangular prism you do. So when we're taking a look at this, and I think to myself, okay, what is made up of this? Well, we now have this net, and I'm going to redraw this net. So I have what was my base. Oh, actually, I'm going to draw it like this. So this was my base, which was 9 by 7. And then the sides folded down, which had a height of 4, but it's still a length of 9. They then had also the sides folded down, which also had a length of 4. Oh, sorry, because of my system having that. And last but not least, we had the matching base, which had a height of 7. So all of a sudden I could see that this and this are both 63. 9 by 4, both of these are 36. And both of these are 28, because I'm finding the area of the rectangles. It's just base times height. Well, so now I have to add all them up. So I can say 63 times 2, because there's 2 of them, plus 36 times 2, because there's 2 of them, plus 28 times 2, because there's 2 of them, 126 plus 72 plus 56, 198 plus 56, 254 units squared, because this is area. So you can use this resource to help you. Now notice, I have this clicked off. If you want, you can see the box as well simultaneously. So as it's closing up, you can see which side references both, if you prefer to visualize it like that. So the questions that I have for you, here are your instructions for them. Draw a net of the resulting rectangular prism. Use the link to help you with that net. In that net, I want you to label all measurements, just like I did, so you could visualize which is correct. Calculate the surface area, which means the area of each side. Calculate the volume. Here is your first practice problem. A is 2, so the length of the base. B is 5.5, and C is 3. As I said, B, I believe they're actually using G. So I actually mix these up. This is your C, and that's your G. So it's A, C, and G, because A is that, C, perfect. All right, so go ahead and do this question. So I have my net drawn, and I have at least 2 sides of each marked. I can see that now this is going to be 11. So that's my base. That's my other base. The sides to the left of the base, so they're both 6. And then I have a 16.5 and a 16.5. You might start learning that there's a little pattern to here. It ends up being 2 times 5.5, a 2 times 3, and a 3 times 5.5, but there's 2 of each of them, times 2, times 2, times 2. We add them all up together. So all of a sudden, this is a 22 plus a 12 plus a 33, 67 units squared is my surface area. My volume, well, the area of the base, I actually already found it. It's 11. It was 2 times 5.5 times the height, which was 3, is therefore 33 units cubed. And that's my volume. Here's practice 2. Go ahead. Here is my net. So again, I am now going to find I can find the individual areas of each one. So for example, my base, which is right here, is 7.2 times 5. And when I do 7.2 times 5, I get that this is 36. Now I'm going to do the 7.2 times 6 and realize that this right here is going to be a 43.2. And last but not least, this is a 6 times 5, and that's going to be a 30. Now again, there's so many little tricks. You could realize that for a rectangular prism, well, all 3 of those sides, because I did the 3 different ones, is just doubled. So I'm now just going to say, okay, for 3.2 plus 36 plus 30, and multiply all of that times 2, and I get that it's 218.4 units squared is my surface area. Then I go to my volume. The area of the base was 7.2 times 5, which I already know is 36. I did that right here. I multiply it by the height of the prism, which is 6. So I multiply this by 6, and I get that the volume is equivalent to 216 units cubed. So there's my volume of practice 2. I have one more of these. Again, feel free to use that to be helping you. The Google link allows you to visualize it. Go ahead. So here again is my net of the drawing. I want to find the surface area. So I'm starting with my surface area. And again, I'm going to realize that here is my base, which has an area of 3 units squared. So I have 3, but I have 2 of them because the other one is right here. I then have a 6 times 2. This is 12 units squared, so plus 12. But again, I have 2 of them. Here's the other one right there. Plus, I have 9 units squared from right here. But again, I have 2 of them because of right here. So my surface area is 6 plus 24 plus 18. So my surface area is 48 units squared. Then for my volume, I've already found the area of my base. It's right here, so why do more work? 3 multiplied by the height, which is 6. We could again just find that right here, we're stated it. And this is therefore 18 units cubed is my volume. Now the last few questions of this are requiring you to use your knowledge in a different way. And these are the types of questions that you can expect on the summative. I'm not just going to ask you to find the surface area and volume. I'm going to be asking you questions more of this nature. So use the program to help you. Feel free. Create a rectangular prism that has a volume of 60 units cubed. State the values of A, C, and G that you used. I want you to then draw the net of the rectangular prism and then find the surface area of the prism that you created. So take a while on this. The last 3 questions are this. I expect you to be taking, 15 minutes to work through these last few questions. So if you're working 15 minutes, that's okay. I want you to work through this and challenge yourself. So, you have any questions? Feel free and message me. So I'll be looking and marking whether you were correct or wrong for the values that you gave A, C, and G, as well as whether your surface area was correct based on the prism that you had. So make sure that you go back to the play posit and see how you did after I grade it. Now, when we take a look at this, I've given 2 examples. In this one, I've made it a 6x5 base with a height of 2. My volume is 60. And when I found the surface area of this was 104 units squared. Now, in my second example, I made the base 7.5 by 8 and a height of 1, still a volume of 60, but this surface area is 151 units squared. What I'm hoping to show is while the volume can be the same, the surface area may be different. And the same goes true. Having the same surface area doesn't mean we have the same volume. Okay, so now I have the next practice problem that, again, I want you to be spending about 15 minutes on. So your goal is to create a rectangular prism that has 144 units cubed. Maybe you might only need 10 to 12 minutes because we just did one problem. You might feel a little more confident. So go ahead. Here are my 2 examples for practice 5. So I made the base a 9 by 8 with a height of 2, giving me a volume of 144 units cubed. My surface area for this one happened to be 212 units squared. Again, I will be seeing if yours are correct. I will also be looking at your notes to see your net. This one, I made a 6 by 6 base with a height of 4. This had a surface area of 168 units squared. Don't forget to put those units. Now the last one is a challenge question. I know it's going to be hard, but I expect you to do it. And feel free to take upwards of 20 minutes. I want you to struggle for this. Feel free to work with a partner on this. Create a rectangular prism that has a surface area of 48 units squared. So not the volume, the surface area. Then your goal is to then find the volume of that rectangular prism. So give this a shot. Now, I know some of you might be having a little difficulty with this right now. So I'm going to give a little trick. Pick some of the measurements. Okay, if all of a sudden you know that the base is 2 by 3, what's the height have to be? Pick 2, try to find the third. So keep playing around. You got this. So here are 2 examples. The first one, you can see that I made it as a 2 by 3.6 base and a height of 3. My second one, it was a 2 by 6 base and a height of 1.5. It even takes me a little while to sort of figure this out. So now the volume of this, again, the area of the base times the height. So the volume is 7.2. That's the area of the base times the height, which is 21.6 units cubed. This one, the volume of the base is 12 times 1.5, which is 18 units cubed. So again, having the same surface area does not mean that they have the same volume. I understand this one was a little harder, but hopefully you took the time and really spent some time playing around with it. It's the same way I do. You know, I pick a couple things. You know, I picked 2 and 6 for this one. So therefore, I knew for my surface area, I had 2 sides of area 12. Well, then I thought to myself, I need to multiply 2 by whatever the height is for both sides. And I needed to multiply 6 by the height for both sides of that. And I knew the surface area was 48. So I actually can solve an equation. I could realize that 48, the surface area, is equal to 24 plus a total of 16h minus the 24. 24 equals 16h. Divide by 16 and I get 1.5. But there's many different ways about going about getting this. That's just the algebraic way. So if you have any questions, make sure you let me know. Upload your notes so I can see your drawings of your net. See you guys later. Bye.